Hello, everyone. It's 12:02, so we're going to begin the presentation now. So I'm going to ask our presenters to get ready, and we'll move on to the first slide and settle in, and hope you're going to enjoy this. Welcome to the KABN Systems North America Ask Me Anything event, better known as an AMA and made famous by Reddit. My name is George Cholis. I'm the founder of Agoracom, and I'll be your host for this event. Before my brief introduction of KABN, I want to thank each one of you who has taken the time to join us under the circumstances, and wish your families continued vigilance, safety, and health until we can all get through this. Turning my attention to KABN, I can't help but note how timely this presentation is. Specifically, the issues of online privacy and data protection had already become very serious over the past couple of years, beginning with Facebook's data privacy scandal and leading to the implementation of GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, 2 years ago. GDPR is essentially EU law on data protection and privacy that strongly addresses the transfer of personal data. The primary purpose of it is to give individuals like you and I control over our personal data by regulating all international business that handles our data. That was followed by the California Consumer Privacy Act, which became effective January 1st, 2020. Together, these two laws will have a significant impact on companies that collect and process our personal data, especially those in social media, online retail, digital banking, cloud computing, and healthcare. So why is this KABN presentation so timely? If this was January 2nd, 2020, I'd say this presentation is timely because the two laws now being effective mean big companies can't simply trade and profit in our data anymore. They need new business models. And that would be enough because KABN, in its simplest form, turns the problem of data privacy into a profit for individuals while providing big businesses with new and compliant models. How they do it is what you're going to watch and learn in the next 30 minutes. But as you do, keep in mind what actually has changed since January 2nd. COVID-19 has driven deeper online than ever thought imaginable. And though we'll eventually move back into the public, consensus is that levels of online engagement will remain very high as people become more accustomed to carrying on big parts of their lives online. This new paradigm will put data privacy and opportunities to the test in ways never thought possible back on January 2nd. And KABN stands to be a big potential beneficiary because it specializes in continuous online identity verification, not just identity verification, but continuous, as well as identity management and monetization. And now you know why you've been personally invited here. I believe it'll be a great use of your time. At the very least, we've given you a much needed excuse to close your door for the next 60 minutes. The format is going to be a 30-minute presentation, watch-only mode, followed by a 30-minute Q&A in which you can submit your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. After that, we'll have a wrap-up and let you know how to reach us. As a side note, as many of you know, KABN has announced that it's engaged in a proposed business combination or RTO deal with Torino Power Solutions. The symbol is TPS on the CSE. KABN and TPS's shareholders have both approved the deal, and the companies are waiting on approval from the CSE. The companies have made all the necessary filings. So if you want more information on the progress or discuss participating in the financing, please contact your financial advisor and/or KABN directly after this presentation. Now we'll move on to our disclaimer so we can begin the presentation. As you can see in front of you, this is the company disclaimer. You should have received a link to this and other items with your invitation. If you haven't read it, please feel free to go offline and click the link in your invite and rejoin the conversation if necessary. And now I'm happy to present the team who will be presenting KABN to you. David Lukacs, he's a co-founder and president. Ben Kessler, CEO. Michael Konikoff, Chief Revenue Officer, and RJ Reiser, who's the company's Chief Business Development Officer. Gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you, George. Really appreciate it. Hi, this is David Lukacs, and I'd like to welcome everyone today and thank you for joining us. And I want to let you know how it all started. It all started with an idea in late 2017, and KABN North America was born in mid-2019. The first thing we did was assemble a great leadership team, advisory committee, and board of experienced, driven, and highly qualified people that have been successful at previous endeavors. I want to let you know that this is not our first rodeo tackling big problems. One example of this is that in the late 90s, we developed the online credit card and payment solutions for Visa and MasterCard, where none previously existed for the Canadian market. The solution we built was a major game changer, and we've been involved with others, but with KABN, we all feel that the opportunity is even bigger, and we're here today to tell you why. For KABN, it all starts with a simple statement. At KABN, we believe that ownership of identity is a basic human right, and individuals should be the primary beneficiary of any use of their identity. Everything we do and everything we build and deploy into the marketplace is based on this simple but powerful philosophy. KABN is in the business of verification, management, and monetization of online identity. These three principal tenets make individual identity both unique and valuable. We estimate that in the current marketplace today, there are about 60 recognized companies that provide identity service verification, mostly to commercial clients who want to verify a customer. All of these companies are transactional, or almost all of them are transactional, meaning that if John steps into a bank to be verified, the bank will call on a service to verify John and create a profile. But when John goes to another bank or another commercial operation and needs verification, he has to do it all over again, and that pattern repeats because 95% of our competition is transactional. KABN changes all that with a unique business approach. So it's our team and our business approach that creates reusable bank-grade verified identity. We put the value of identity into the user's hands, not the commercial ecosystem, making it easy for a KABN customer to share their verified identity over and over again, just like you do in the real world. As we step into 2020, and like we did in the late 90s, the world is going through an evolution. And so many things that we do going forward, as George mentioned, and as a society and world are changing, and things will never be the same. And we look at identity as part of that. So I want to talk a moment about the changing landscape and our competitive value. So there's a lot of different areas of Fintech. And I'm sure we all appreciate that it comes in different forms, whether it's banking, identity, data management. These are just a few examples of what we're seeing in the marketplace when it comes to certain valuation. The sectors are growing rapidly, and at the end of the day, most of the value is placed on data. That's the new gold. When we look at digital banking, which Ben Kessler, our CEO, will talk about a little bit later, we see that cardholders are valued somewhere in the range of about $1,000 US. And in some cases, that can be even higher. So any bank that has a single cardholder or multiple cardholders, that general multiple is about $1,000. Recently, Visa paid to acquire Plaid, a fintech data company, $5.3 billion. They collect data on what you spend and where you spend. Trulio, which is a Canadian company that does traditional verification of identity, Goldman Sachs helped raise them $70 million recently. And just a few weeks ago, Intuit, major company in the US, decided to buy Credit Karma for $7.1 billion. And if you look at Credit Karma, what do? They give away free identity scores. And what they do is they profit from the back-end value of the data. So that really gives you an idea of where the landscape is going. But we want to talk for a moment about why digital identity matters. And this is to us the important factor about our business. And we don't want to talk to you today about technology. We want to talk to you today about solutions and opportunities. And I'm going to give you a simple example of what you do every day. Now, none of us probably do it today because we all get to sit around the house in our sweats and we don't really spend a lot of time going out. But when we do, we generally take two things with us, and we might carry that in our coat, in our pants pockets, or potentially a satchel or purse. What we do is we carry a wallet and we carry key rings. Those are the two key things that and obviously in our wallet, or also we probably have some cash on us. But at the end of the day, those two items, your wallet and key rings, form the basis for your identity. Your wallet contains all kinds of information, both public and private, about you. You might carry business cards, you might carry pictures, things that you'll share privately and things that you'll share publicly, like your driver's license, insurance, and credit cards. On your key ring, you're going to have keys. Many of us will have keys to vehicles, offices, home, maybe a bank vault. There'll be different keys for different purposes. That is the way that we think of identity, as in containers, contained in elements that we can easily access and determine who we need to share what with and when with. And some of those keys will open up opportunities for us to create value. And KABN's job is to help our customers create value and share in that value. And we use ID every day. I mean, but we don't really use it online very often, but that is changing, and ID to us is probably one of our most valuable assets. Like time, it can be tangible and profitable if managed well. I've already told you about that KABN believes that the ownership of identity is a basic human right, and that you, being the owner of that identity, should benefit from it, and that everything we do is built on that philosophy. But identity is what makes us unique. But since the inception of the internet, digital identity has been a clear afterthought. With today's acceleration of online commerce, education, healthcare, government, and other services, digital identity and the data that surrounds it is online gold. In the conventional world, it's easy to prove who you are by either visual or traditional identity verification. It's a process that most people are easily accustomed to. But in the digital world, it's not easy to prove you are you. Identity verification is managed on a site-by-site basis, having to do it all over every single time, and users are required to deliver sensitive documents to unknown third parties, potentially compromising the value of their identity and future value of that data, and potentially leading to the risk of identity fraud. I wanted to share something with you. According to a recent McKinsey report on identity in the digital age, digital ID can also unlock value by promoting inclusion, formalization, and digitization. And with digital ID, they estimate that 90% of customer onboarding costs could be potentially reduced by using a digital ID. So imagine that if you had a single sign-on process where you never had to remember a password again, you never had to go in and get credentials, it was all managed by your wallet and or your key ring. So again, we've talked about this. Everywhere you go and everywhere you do online creates a trail of breadcrumbs. It creates cookies. Companies are benefiting from the things you do and the data you generate. Just search for something and boom, every other site you go to has ads for the items you recently searched for. Yes, in some cases, Big Brother is watching you. However, Google recently announced that within the next 2 years, they will be excluding third-party cookies or third-party trails to things that are not their own because it breaches privacy rules. Up to now, corporations have benefited from that data. But we believe, shouldn't you be the ones that benefit from the data? We really think so, and so do many governments, as they're changing the way privacy and data is dealt with. George touched on this. There's been huge changes in Europe, California, which we believe will extend eventually to the rest of the United States and in Canada. People, not corporations, should manage and receive value for identity and its related data. What's our approach? As we mentioned earlier, we've totally reinvented the way digital identity is created and verified. By creating reusable bank-grade verified identity, we've put the value into the hands of users, not the commercial ecosystem, making it easier for a KABN customer to share their verified identity over and over again, just like you do in the real world. By introducing this disruptive model to a traditional industry, we've had to change our value proposition and business model. And while we still offer commercial verification services, just like our competitors, each customer, each individual gets their own KABN ID And that gives them the power to manage and control that information, their personal and public information, and share with whom they want, when they want, and how they want. They own it. So what we did was turn the process upside down, solidifying a unique business approach that gives customers all the power over their digital identity and data, putting it exactly where it belongs. KABN's business process is to give away tools to consumers to help them better verify, validate, and manage their digital identity. And then to bring them offers based on aggregated pools of public data, and that this public data, we can create a matching offering engine so that we can offer our users things that they want and need in a private setting through a single application. This makes it easier for a user to control what they want to see, when they want to see, and how they want to see it. And this is all based on public data. We do not ever rent, sell, or give away any data. We just create relationships. And an example of this would be really simple. For anyone who uses Uber today, and those that are in the Vancouver area who have joined us, they know that Uber's new. But for Uber to get to a large population, it would be easy as KABN grows to ask KABN to identify those users that might be suitable for Uber. Uber could create a unique offering for KABN and its users because we know public information based on their private identity. And we could deliver to those users, never directly from Uber, an offering that they can look at and they can decide if they want. Uber would pay us a fee for providing the offer and a bounty if the offer was accepted. That's the way we look at it. What's really interesting about the digital identity market is it is applicable for 100% of consumers and businesses in the marketplace. It's really amazing. There's not many products out there. So our reach is 100% of the population over the age of 13. Now, why we say 13? Because most privacy laws are based on that age. Overall, it's estimated that 90% of the US and Canada's population use the internet and use it regularly. Given these stats, we estimate that about 300 million people are primary to our market in North America. Today, as George mentioned, the digital market for identity is fairly nascent. But as we predict, as we did with e-commerce, then in just a few short years, this will accelerate. And given the current macro environment, and we're seeing this more and more, that this will become a vital and even mandatory service to the market space. So think about some of the sectors that digital identity is applicable to. Imagine you could reduce identity fraud, because if a transaction was about to happen, KABN uses biometrics and other technologies to make sure that you are you in a transaction. So it's not just a digital identity of information, but we also combine that with biometrics like your face or voice print or thumbprint, making sure that you are you. So we could reduce potentially credit card fraud from a $30 billion industry down to a negligible industry. Again, combining that with purchases and validation for e-commerce. The esport and online gaming industry, we're already seeing a massive traction there for two reasons. One, anywhere there's a tournament, you want to verify the people are who they say they are. And for opportunities like online gaming and social networking, we can create value propositions that extend beyond the individual game with users that are affiliates of our system. So if we work with a gaming client, we can work with their constituents to provide them with KABN ID. And from KABN ID, if there's any revenue generated, we can share that. So that extends the reach of these opportunities. Information data services, fairly self-explanatory. We're creating tons and tons of data. Education. We're already involved in proposing pilot solutions for some of the education ministries, because we believe that, people who take and want to get academic credit should be the same people that are taking exams. Government, voting, there's all kinds of applications. And healthcare is a massive opportunity, not just in Canada, but when you think about the US, the healthcare system is very different. And we have a key advisor on our team that is a patient advocate, spends a lot of time in Washington, and and Leslie's been very helpful in in helping us understand that. There's many, many more business opportunities, but those are just a few that we can identify today. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about something new that we've just launched. It's called a liquid avatar. So how does liquid avatar reinforce our digital identity approach? Again, making us very different. We're not a competitor anymore. We're a complementer. So we can work with Ontario's EID program, Digital ID. We can work with things like Royal Bank's digital identity, Secure Key. We can work with all the competitors out there that are already providing digital ID, and we can put those digital IDs on a private key ring that if a consumer needs to access that through their liquid avatar, they have direct access to use that over and over again. The KABN ID makes that liquid avatar user a unique identity user in our program, and we can also allow them to share their KABN ID. So again, like a traditional passport wallet and keyring, liquid avatar is the next generation of consumer-focused digital identity management. By storing information securely outside of the user's phone and tablet and using biometrics, access and control, the user can decide who sees what and when. And again, what's really important is we don't just use digital identity, we also use biometrics. Those key indicators make it easy for a user not to have to remember all their passwords, not to remember certain data. They can store that securely and access that through their liquid avatar and their biometrics so that they don't have to remember every password that they have in their system. What we're doing with liquid avatar is we are mimicking what you do in the real world. And we're going to show you a quick demo of liquid avatar. Hopefully everyone can see this. This is the prototypical app. We're building it now, but this is an early version. So using an app, it'll be available for Android, it'll be available for iOS, and you can use it directly on the web. And so you can create an avatar. So we start by creating an avatar. So obviously you want to pick, male, female, neutral. You don't want to be a robot, or I want to upload an image. So I want to start with an image. So we pick something. So in this case, we're picking that we're a female character. We can build using high-end graphics. We can build an image that looks like ourselves. Shape of face, nose, eyes, ears. And in fact, we can go to full body, and we can talk about that later. But this is a huge opportunity for us to move forward. And you can change your liquid avatar as you go. And once you save it, you're then prompted to enter a KABN ID. Now, if you've, through one of our commercial operations, already have a KABN ID, you can log in immediately, or you can create your own KABN account. Or in some cases, you may want to move forward without verification, which will limit your use of a liquid avatar. So in this case, we're going to log in with our KABN ID. And since it was a female character, Jane would take a live selfie of herself to verify against our records. She's already signed in with KABN ID that this is Jane. Now her dashboard appears, and her dashboard controls what she gets to see on the app. She can manage her avatar, look at her community. She can interact with some of our own products and services like our Pegasus flight card, and she can view offers, read her avatar, and share. So let's manage Jane's avatar. So as you can see on the image, Jane's avatar also comes with something below it called a dot code. And that dot code provides information that I want to share or Jane wants to share with the world or privately with each individual. That we'll show you how to read that, but that dot code can be read and can be authenticated for private transactions. Excuse me. So Jane can manage her key rings, which means she can manage who gets to see what, when, and how. And Jane can also manage other aspects about gamification, like badges, things that Jane is interested in. So Jane can turn badges on and off, tell people what she's into, what she's not into, and she can select how she has that displayed, and then she can display it. So the image not only displays your avatar, it also displays some of the things you're interested in, maybe some badges you've earned or achievements, and it provides verified information that you can share with others. So now we're going to show you how to share this. So just like in social media, and anything that you've used in the past, pick where you want to share it. In this case, we're going to talk about sharing it through email. Jane clicks her email and it automatically embeds her Liquid avatar, and she can send it off to whomever she wants. Now, in this case, she may have shared it with Ben. So, she goes to the community and she clicks on Ben, who's somebody she's already shared something with, and Ben's information shows all his public information and any private information that he's previously shared with Jane. So Ben doesn't have to type in anything. He doesn't have to give Jane any of his social media links. He doesn't have to do anything. And if Ben was signing in or Jane was signing in to a website, we'd automatically authenticate that website, either directly or indirectly. We can authenticate a website password entry on a private databases, again, by using your face and your Liquid avatar. So that's the way that you'd share. If Jane wanted to read a Liquid avatar, so she saw a Liquid avatar on an email, all she does is click the button, takes a picture of the Liquid avatar, and Ben's information is automatically in the app. She absolutely immediately has access. So you can see the personal applications for this, the business applications, and products like our own, which Ben will talk about, like our Pegasus Flight Card. We can have mobile banking solutions directly embedded into the app, and we can also embed offers. So everything that is unique to Jane and Jane receives as offers from KABN is all available online or through our app. And Michael Konikoff, our CRO, will talk about that a little bit more. And that's really the basis of the way the app works. So I really wanted to, give you a quick demo on our app, and thank you for listening to us. And again, what we're doing is we're mimicking what goes on in the real world. So we'd like to thank you, and I'd like to pass over to Ben, the CEO of KABN, to continue.
Great, thank you, David. David highlighted our KABN ID and Liquid avatar solutions, which are not only critical for, but form the anchor for our financial services use case. We realize that one of the most significant challenges in financial services is to quickly and efficiently validate and verify a person's identity, to know who you are. Within financial services, it's called KYC, or Know Your Customer. Think of KYC as a user identity and verification process. And then a second part required in the financial services sector specifically is called AML, or anti-money laundering. And you can think of that as a user check required to prevent suspicious transactions by the user. It's a screening against terrorist watch lists, sanction screening, and basically other criminal lists. Anyone who has opened up a bank account, invested traditionally, or even dabbled in digital currencies are familiar with the headaches of going through this part of the onboarding process. And so in part, this frustration led to the recent growth of online and digital bank startups called challenger banks. David mentioned some of those earlier at the beginning of the webinar, but you may also have heard of some of them, like Revolut, N26, Chime in the US, or Coho in Canada. And the problem is, according to John Davies, who's a subject matter expert in payments, he's also deputy chair of this emerging payments association, is that these challenger banks can boast of the millions of customers that have signed up in a rather short period of time, and also the high valuations and the high lifetime values associated with these customers, which David mentioned earlier. But do they truly know who these customers are? His answer is, of course they don't. With KABN ID and Liquid avatar solutions, we actually do know. If you take a look at that second bullet, in terms of who are the target demographic for our financial services use case, millennials and Gen Z rule. Today, millennials represent approximately 50% of the North American workforce and spend over $600 billion annually. Millennials have a tremendous distrust for brick and mortar financial institutions, and they want to control their own identity. They also want to spend their money when they want, how they want, and where they want. and they want to do that under their own terms without unreasonable fees and rules. And they're very focused on rewards and the value of their online presence. Effectively, everyone online is their own influencer as they create value for themselves. A few other points I just want to mention with respect to millennials in the North American market. 70% of North American millennials are interested in digital payment services that can give them better understanding and control of their personal spending. And even further, by 2022, 75% of millennials will be digital banking users. And so that's why it's so exciting that KABN received approval to launch our Pegasus Flight Visa card and banking wallet program in Canada, which addresses both digital and fiat programs positioned to millennials, Gen Z, and even some late Gen X. And so according to a recent report from Payments Canada, cash transactions in Canada declined 40% in volume over the last 5 years. Canadians continue to adopt digital payment channels such as contactless, e-commerce, and mobile, which now represent 73% and 59% of both total payment volume and value, respectively. The Pegasus Flight Visa Card program is unique as it ties directly into KABN ID and Liquid Avatar solutions that David covered, allowing everyone who's verified and passed by KABN in Canada to be eligible for the Pegasus Flight Visa Card program. This significantly reduces acquisition, implementation, and onboarding costs, and creates potentially sustainable revenue and marketing streams for KABN. And just as another note, the expansion of the card program to the US is currently under discussions. All Pegasus Flight Visa cardholders will also be entitled to participate in KABN Cash, KABN's cashback and loyalty program, as well as other feature programs, which my colleague Michael will talk about shortly. And finally, let me just touch on the last point on that slide, which is key. It is that financial services and banking not only generates transactional revenue, but it also generates a tremendous amount of data. As we build out our ecosystem, the value of that data grows. It's online gold, as David mentioned earlier. It's why Visa spent $5.3 billion on acquiring Plaid, a fintech data connector, as David mentioned earlier, and why Intuit spent $7.1 billion for Credit Karma, which is really a free credit service for consumers, but does generate a wealth of financial service data on the back end. So with that, let me quickly turn it over to my colleague, Michael Konikoff, who will talk more about the loyalty engagement use case and the respective data play. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. KABN Cash is our loyalty and engagement platform, which includes a cashback and card link program and integrates with our banking wallet. KABN Cash is a fundamental driver of KABN revenue, as it not only enables online and offline transactions with Pegasus Flight Card, it is also designed to engage non-cardholder users of the KABN platform. This is a traditional use of accumulating consumer data and driving engagement, and it also enables the consumer to control their own use of the program via where they earn, where they spend, on their own terms, and what information they would like to see within their experience within our system. We are following the traditional deployment of engagement that you would find in financial institutions, mass retailers, and even frequent flyer programs. By understanding how our customers interface within our community, we can continuously provide our consumers with a pristine and exciting experience. In addition, we can ensure that we are maintaining not only relevance, but driving people to come to our multiple points of interface to engage with the program. We do this by providing relevant content, exciting shopping experiences, unique and valuable offers for both merchandise and experiential experiences like event and travel. It should be noted that consumers prefer a single self-contained ecosystem for shopping online. And we also know that 69% of all millennials in particular fall into this category. The key driver of our engagement protocols is data analytics. Throughout, we are capturing data based on transactions and activities and are used to understand and drive consumer behavior segments. This enables the personalization of user experiences and offers. Throughout the customer journey, KABN will be capturing on an anonymous basis, just based on their KABN ID, various sets of data based on transactions, geography, various points of engagements, responses to surveys to establish key aggregates. By understanding individual preferences, we are able to personalize the experience and keep the program relevant on an individual basis. A great example of this is the PC Optimum experience. As people shop within these two stores, all purchases are tracked and individual shopping behaviors are determined. When you go to check out using your membership card, they're able to put on the back of your receipt a relevant offer based on how you shop. They in turn realize high engagement with their members and see significant conversions, all the while driving revenue to their bottom line and keeping those customers happy, engaged, and coming back. We too have the ability to personalize offers to raise the conversion levels. All this leads to incremental revenue lifts as we get a higher conversion on transactions within our system. These aggregates or segments become increasingly valuable over time to our clients and other third parties that would like to push unique offers to unique subsets of our membership. At this point, we will be able to offer up this access at a premium price. It should be noted that communication to the individuals goes directly to their account profile within the platform, and we are not sharing or providing a direct link to the individual. If the individual converts on the offer, then the client or third party can establish a direct relationship with the individual at that time and independent of KABN. Engagement platform affects not only the individual customer's value, but the lifetime value of individual consumers. By being able to personalize experiences and maintain relevance, we will be able to monitor an individual's value to the program based on usage and then aggregate against other users. This helps us determine who our low, mid, and high value customers are, and in effect enable us to understand the unique differences between each and determine the drivers that create the high value customers. With this knowledge, we can affect the overall lifetime value of our customers, which will be a key metric of success. The effect of our card link and cashback is to drive velocity and frequency of use of the Pegasus Flight Card and drive incremental revenue, which is a fundamental principle of engagement. The goal here is to give each cardholder the reason to shop more and spend more. Just like an Air Miles program, the more you spend, the more you earn. Only in our case, the accrual is cash back on your card. We need to provide use cases for individuals to use the card within our environment to both increase the velocity of when they use the card and spend more on the card, and then get them to use the card more frequently. To this, we are deploying both our card linking for spend at POS and our online merchant mall, which will provide cash back to the card based on each qualifying transaction. Card linking enables us to link a special offer or a coupon to our consumer's prepaid card. These offers are available at participating merchants and are combined with the effective use of proximity marketing. As such, we'll be able to reach our cardholders at the right place and at the right time and drive them to current offers at local merchants where they are at any given time, based on where they are at any given time. Our merchant mall enables us to offer shopping, some of North America's biggest and best online merchants, and allows our users to earn cash back based on their spend at these merchants. In each case, cashback is essentially a commission remitted to KABN that we disperse partially as cashback on the card, with the other part of the commission driving right to our bottom line revenue. All the while, we are capturing additional insight into our users' spending habits. We've created the ability for us to white label our cashback platform for third parties to use. At this point, we have an LOI in place with one group that has close to 13 million users in their system. The net effect of white labeling is quite simply more users coming into our system to spend. This drives not only bottom line revenue, but increases our leverage to negotiate better commissions and deals with our online merchants. I'd now like to pass the mic over to RJ Reiser, our Chief Business Development Officer.
Thank you, Michael. So my name is RJ Reiser, the Chief Business Development Officer. I'm also the new guy. I've been with the company for about 2 months, but I've known KABN for over 1.5 years because I was with customer. After that, I've decided to invest in the company, And then shortly towards the end of last year, they asked me to come on as an advisor. And then 2 months ago, they asked me to join the team, and I jumped at that opportunity. If you look at the little cartoon on the bottom right, it was in the New Yorker in 1993 by Peter Steiner. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. That is the main problem that we're solving as a company. And today, our digital identity platform that is proven empowers users to manage their identity and provides our clients with verified users for their online services. Today, we also have approval from Visa Canada for our debit card that will be plugged in to our banking wallet. Over the next 90 days, we have planned product releases for Liquid Avatar, KABN Cash, and the banking wallet. This is the foundation to start driving the revenue and enriching the data around our user profiles on our identity platform. And we're also going to continue to push forward in the approval process for Visa. We all know and talk to it, data's king, it's the gold. That's how we're going to drive our revenue. We've created a framework that we can compliantly manage the user data and their profiles. We don't sell, we don't share the data, but we provide a tailored experience for our users. We've structured our network so that we can leverage other networks outside of ours. We can build onto our network to improve that user experience and grow the knowledge and data that we have for all of our users. Our message is resonating. We can't go out and boil the ocean. We got to stay laser focused. And we have addressed a number of those in this presentation: the gaming, esports, education, healthcare, and loyalty. At this point, we have 3 executed LOIs that support our product roadmap that have the potential for millions of users. Please reach out to me if you guys have any questions, especially reach out to me if you guys have some business development opportunities. Thank you, and I'll push it back to David.
Hi, it's David Lukacs again. I wanted to wrap this up a little bit for you because to some people, there's a lot to think about and absorb at the beginning of what we're talking about. We're talking about a number of unique opportunities all in one combined effort. And at the end of the day, again, Liquid Avatar is a no-cost solution for consumers. So a consumer never pays to get a Liquid Avatar or be part of the network. Our opportunity with a user or customer is to be able to help them verify, manage, and monetize their identity. And in that loop, we also receive value. So what's in our ecosystem? We've got our KABN ID, and our KABN ID works with digital exchanges, financial services, web services, commercial clients, and our digital identity competitors, making us a complementer for digital identity. So a user can have multiple digital identities in a single Liquid Avatar, all on separate keys. And think of these as individual keys on key rings. We can have our financial services at Pegasus Flight. That includes card services, banking wallet, transaction services, and exchange services, and other list of growing financial services as the company accelerates. KABN Cash is a key way to the way a consumer receives value and we make revenue. So we can have card link partners, white label partners, e-commerce providers, and service providers. But what's also unique about our system is that we can have partners and affiliates in the social media area, esports, gaming, government, e-commerce, again, digital identity, web services, financial services, healthcare, education. What's important in our partner network is that they become originators or people or organizations or influencers that help us create Liquid Avatars. And they have an ability to extend their reach and receive value and profit for allowing their customers to be part of the Liquid Avatar and the KABN ecosystem. So I hope that wraps up a little bit about what we're doing and gives you a picture that Liquid Avatar is in the center. And around that, we have our core services. And around our core services, we have satellite services that create a unified network. You know, as we wrap up this portion of the webinar, we want to leave you with 3 top takeaways. It's always easy to remember 3 items. So we've tried to boil our business down to 3 items. We want you to remember reach. Digital identity is relevant to 100% of the online market and is vital to its continued growth. We've talked about that throughout the presentation, and we believe it's the most important factor, that our business can reach 100% of the online market. 2, we have a unique business approach. It's completely, and we've designed it to be completely different and unique from what exists out there in the digital identity market that is transactional. Our solutions are built to empower users, not corporations, not our clients, and generate revenue and create stakeholder value for everyone in our ecosystem. Third element we'd like you to remember is that we have a really experienced team. Not only just our management team, but we have a great group of advisors and a wonderful board, and all our seasoned executives from the technology, banking, payment, and loyalty industries that have had successful opportunities in the past and benefited from that experience. So at this point now, I think we're going to turn it over to George to talk about some questions.
David, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you. Fantastic presentation. All those elements were great. I'm going to put in my personal bias that Liquid Avatar is my absolute favorite thing about this. And I think that's groundbreaking. So we're going to enter the Q&A phase now. So if you're watching and you got questions, we've already got some in the queue. Put your mouse over the bottom of the screen. You'll see the Q&A button there. Click on it and just type in your question. It'll go into the queue and we'll answer it. So we'll start with some questions that are already there, and then feel free to add to the list because you might have some great questions. So gentlemen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the question, and then you guys will decide who is best suited to answer it. Question number 1, how relevant is your product suite during the current COVID-19 outbreak? Because it seems apparent that you're in a position to emphasize the importance of online identity disintegration to make branchless banking more accessible and safe.
George, it's David. I'm going to take the questions and I'm going to push them over to who I think might be best suited. For that one, I think I'm going to comment, then I'm going to turn it over to Ben very quickly. So we don't want to trade. We know we're relevant given the current macro environment, and we're even more relevant given some of the micro issues in certain sectors. But I think when it comes to banking, Ben, maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think obviously part of the challenges that I referenced earlier with respect to the challenger banks, the online banks, was really being able to properly validate and verify individuals. If you think about branchless banking, it's very different than a financial institution where they could say, come on in to open up an account, bring your passport, bring a utility statement or bill, and we could essentially validate you are who you say you are. In the online world, you have to do that all through whatever your process is. The great thing about KABN ID is we have an efficient process that utilizes biometrics to really validate you are who you say you are. So I think, just to add to David's point, not only for the current macro environment, but really as more folks move to online, we become that much more relevant.
Thanks, gents. Question number 2. Many businesses and governments are concerned with healthcare supply chain management. Can KABN facilitate in any way?
Thanks, George. David again. I don't think that we're aptly relevant initially to supply chain management. That's usually a commercial endeavor. However, I will say that we can verify the users in a supply chain management, making sure that only individuals that are authorized to be in that supply chain management solution are those who say they are, using both their verified identity and biometrics. So only those that are authorized to have access to the system would be able to do so.
Next question is about your liquid avatar, and it's a good one because I'm thinking the same thing. When you consider your liquid avatar, what are the top 3 groups you plan to target on a retail level, as in demographically or geographically within your North American model?
I think the first is I want to talk about gaming and social. I think gaming and social makes the most sense because there's 2 issues. The first one is that is such a large online existing sector. It also suffers from the fact that when a user leaves a network or leaves a game, that they're not generating any ancillary revenue, and we have affiliate programs that can support that. So I think gaming, and that would include gaming, esports, and social. I think the next sector obviously is financial services, and I'll turn that over to Ben in a second. And I think the third one is likely education. And I mean, there's so many more. I mean, e-commerce, but I think education at this point in time is a highly relevant opportunity. I mean, we saw last year the issues that had SAT scams that were conventional, but this year, universities and colleges have to be worried about those that are taking the exams, or those are the people that are going to enter college and university in the following year, having received academic credit. So those are my 3 takes. Ben, maybe you want to comment very quickly on the banking side or financial side.
I think just I won't take up too much time, but what I would add is that if you think about KABN ID and Liquid Avatar as helping with the onboarding process, what we start then looking at is how we can ensure that Liquid Avatar is not just about onboarding, but it's about really what is the next level. Could be transactional in terms of being able to do person-to-person payments or things like that. Just from a transactional basis, being able to make them more efficiently by validating you are who you say you are before a transaction. So that, I think, will certainly be one of the things that we look at, as well as how we expand our financial services and product suite as we go down the road.
And I just want to add one last comment to that. Please keep in mind that Liquid Avatar, again, is a funnel, although on one side of it is a consumer management tool, which again may not have reinforced well enough, but is at no cost to the consumer. The consumer never pays for this. It's always free to the consumer. Our revenue is generated by the data and the areas that Michael outlined. And I think the key there is that it creates a funnel. So Liquid Avatar is relevant to just more than the 3 because it creates this funnel for revenue generation.
Next question, and I always like these questions because you can't assume everyone's got a lock on something. What does the competitive landscape look like for KABN?
I think we touched on that, and I think we can all comment on that. But we've identified the initial digital identity competitors, and we've clearly differentiated. But something to keep in mind, which may not have talked about well enough, is that we can integrate other digital identities into Liquid Avatar. So just because you have your KABN ID doesn't mean that you can't have your Royal Bank digital ID that was recently announced. It doesn't mean that you can't have your EID, which was announced by the Ontario government. So on your private key rings, think of a key ring, you could have a whole bunch of digital identities, which means we're no longer competitive. We're now a cooperator. So it's the principle of cooptation, which was basically introduced in the late 90s, that we're relying upon, that our competitors become our complementers. So we think that we've got value for everyone in the digital identity schema, regardless of where their digital identity originates.
Next question, and I'm going to augment it a little bit. The question is, how do you see privacy regulations affecting your business? And I might add on a little bit to that is, will these privacy regulations that I kind of touched on in the intro, will that be a catalyst for large enterprise and organizations coming to KABN to work together with you?
Again, it's David. Sorry, I don't mean to hog the questions. I wish our Chief Compliance Officer, Lynn Comiskey, was on the phone or on the Zoom call. She'd be the best to answer this. But We originally built around GDPR, which is the General Data Protection rules or regulations in Europe, and they are the gold standard. So we make sure that we are within the realm of how data and privacy and user identity needs to be managed. It's a benefit for us, of course, because it puts the power into the hands of the consumer. That's the premise of the entire program. And we're seeing that in California. We see that in Canada. So we're well positioned to take advantage of those opportunities with KABN North America, and also to allow companies to engage with users through Liquid Avatar that they otherwise wouldn't in a compliant manner. So I think we look at compliance as a really big opportunity for us.
You mentioned that the cards will be launched in Canada. This is the next question. Will be launched in Canada, and mentioned that talks are underway in the US. Where can these cards be used? Only in Canada? That's a two-part question there.
Hey, I'll take that. This is Ben.
Absolutely.
That's a good question. So with respect to the cards, there's always a difference between where cards are issued and where they can be used. Now, on the issuing side, right now, when we launch our program in Canada, only Canadian residents will be able to get the cards. And when we launch in the US, only those folks who reside in the US will be able to get the cards sent to them. That is very different from where you can use the cards. Because of our approval by Visa, those cards would be able to be used globally, wherever Visa accepted, both online, offline, or at ATM. So that's a great question. Hopefully that clarifies it.
Yep. Next question. Don't debit and credit cards already verify my purchase online?
I think I'll take that one as well. So I think that, and David referenced this earlier, currently a lot of online activity, when you go in through checkout, you provide your information and they do an address verification, and folks are familiar with typically an online site will ask you, what is that 3-digit, it's called the CVV or security code, to enter in. But effectively, and what we've spoken about, is that in of itself only proves that whoever is entering in that information is holding on to that card or knows that 3-digit code. They do not actually, and they have not validated that the person is who they say they are. So we talk about that in terms of our capabilities being able to truly prove you are who you say you are, and the applicability towards reducing online fraud, card fraud.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. I like the way you said that, which is it only proves that someone has that card at that second. And that could be anybody at the end of the day. That's a great answer. Next question, guys. In order for KABN to be successful, you'll have to onboard hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of users. How do you do that without breaking the bank?
It really is all about partnerships. It's David, and I think RJ can comment on that as well. It's all about partnerships. I mean, there has to be a value proposition between ourselves and the consumer, and we have very, very high efficiencies, and because we've been building technology for many years, we're able to do things, we think, much more efficiently than our traditional competitors. But I think at the end of the day, we're working with a number of groups that are going to help us onboard many users. And yes, there is a cost to onboard a user, but we and maybe I'll turn it over to Michael. Michael, you're well versed to say, from consumer spending patterns online, what kind of numbers that we can. And I don't want to be particular at this point in time, but in general, we can see from loyalty and engagement programs.
Typically what you can expect on a per user basis is we would aim to try to average $300 per user. That would be a typical spend against usage. As for how we access these people, the one critical component is every single person that comes through the KABN ID protocol gets the opportunity to come into the program and participate. So the earn with people with the card might happen quicker than with people not with the card, but that $300 number is a good number to work with.
And we would receive a percentage of that. So it is significant. The return on investment and our margins are quite high because our technology is already built. RJ, did you have anything that you'd want to add to that?
It's the network effect, right? So as we start loading our customers in, the fee to load that customer, which we approach a little different, is it's always on. We maintain the KYC and AML so that person in our network can go to our other partners, and we don't have to go through that same process to onboard them. So we'll onboard them once and share that cost with our partners, and then we'll maintain it and grow the network.
Thanks, guys. As I'm scrolling through the questions here, I see 3 or 4 that are asking about the RTO, the proposed reverse takeover. So kind of sum it up, how far along is the RTO, and is KABN raising equity right now or planning to in the future? I'm not sure if you're allowed what level of answer you can give there, but those questions are out there. So give us the best you got, guys.
Yeah, it's David. So we can't talk too much about it online because we do not want to be viewed as creating any solicitation of offering.
Right.
We are in what we would consider the final throes of the RTO. We do have an equity offering available, and we would be happy to speak with anyone about that, but we'd have to do it on an individual basis, either through an accredited investor or through a financial advisor.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I knew you couldn't get really specific, but I want to make sure we address those because we had 4 or 5 people who asked those.
And we'd love to say more, but obviously I think everybody can appreciate that we consulted with our counsel before getting onto the call. The other thing, George, I want to mention is just after 1 o'clock now, we're willing to stay on for another 5 or 10 minutes and wanted to thank everyone. But if anyone has to go, we appreciate it, but we'll stay on to answer some additional questions if everyone would like.
Yeah, there are a few more questions, but I'm kind of grouping them. That's why I've been scrolling through them. So there are a couple of questions related to business development, specifically what kind of revenue has been generated to date, and are there any existing clients, or any clients that are existing or lined up? In other words, what does it look like in terms of what is your pipeline? I guess if I had to summarize it, what does your pipeline look like?
So I'm going to start with that and then turn it over to RJ. We've got a very robust pipeline, and we're seeing, especially with the introduction in the last 3 weeks of Liquid Avatar, we're seeing acceleration. But Michael and his team have been working on a number of clients that have come on board, and he's signed a massive, potential massive LOI for us. And he mentioned that there's up to 13 million people for that particular opportunity that is being white labeled. So our pipeline is very robust. To date, we focused on making sure we had our technology right and make sure it was built and ready to go. So our revenues to date are nominal, and our valuation reflects that for particular upside. And RJ, did you want to add any comments to that?
Yeah, so there's lots of opportunity, right? And what we really have to be careful with is not to boil the ocean, but to find our sweet spot, and we have with those segments that we mentioned, and then create the right partners to start building that ecosystem out. There's lots and lots of demand for the digital identity. We want to choose the correct partners, and our model is a little bit different. It's not to make money on each person that we validated in that process to say we're going to charge you so many dollars for everyone that we provide the KYC. It's to create the network, and then the services that follow up, the loyalty programs, the credit card programs, and other networks, and the data that we generate is where our revenue stream is coming from.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. It's everybody who knows us, here's our philosophy. It's crawl, walk, run. and we've come out of our crawl stage, and we're ready to really start moving relatively quickly.
There are a couple of questions related to, so I'll ask the one that kind of summarizes a couple of them. When did you get visa approval for Canada? When do you anticipate approval for the US? And are there other jurisdictions that you're applying to, as well as any other major credit card companies?
Yeah, so this is Ben. I can answer that at a high level. At the end of last year, we received approval for Visa Canada to roll that program out. And it's currently in implementation. As I think folks can imagine, you can't start a project until you have the approval to do so. Once you have the approval to do so, you have to start the implementation. So there is a lag between when a network like Visa says go to when you can roll out the program. Within the US, we're having dialogue with potential partners right now. I think the last part of that question was typically when you roll out a card program with one network, and by network I define that as Visa, American Express, or MasterCard, or Discover, you typically stay with that brand to roll out your other products. So as we look to expand into potentially other relevant products, as we look to see if not just a prepaid or a debit product, there may be opportunities to pursue credit products, we typically would stick with that same network brand.
I got a great question here from Steve that's non-financial, non-business, but more the security side. How is KABN dealing with the potential for breaches of data, breaches or hackers similar to the current explosion of identity theft and the recent thefts of data from Life Labs, Marriott, et cetera? So essentially, guys, how do you make sure that your clients and your customers' data is going to be secure from the hands of hackers, and people are going to want that? The more successful you get, I'm sure you're going to become a target.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We're not going to go deep into that because we wouldn't want to disclose anything we're doing. And I will say that Ben and I can both verify that we were victims of the Marriott hack separately and independently. So we understand that. A lot of the hacks and data, and I won't qualify them or segment them in a particular way, but a lot of the data is actually not primary data, but backup data. The way that we ensure quality and security is fairly simple. One is we use biometrics. So it's really hard for George to get into David's account because George and David don't look like each other. So we've deployed very effective methodologies to ensure that the data is secure. We don't host any of our own servers for data. We use global recognized names for data security, and we can't, because it's illegal, and we never would. We don't put any personally identifying information on the blockchain, but we use the blockchain and other solutions to create high value of data security. So we've really looked at this, and one of our advisors is a cybersecurity expert. So we've really done our best to ensure that. And lastly, we don't personally store any data. So the keys on a key ring open up file cabinet drawers that we may never store data on. Those are just keys to somewhere else that the data is stored. So we've tried to ensure that we've created a system that is easy to manage, easy to use, and uses what we already have, like our biometrics, to make sure that security is enhanced.
A couple of other technical questions here. How realistic is it to patent the IP given it's a competitive space?
We've looked at that, and we're still uncertain as to the value proposition. Don't mean to be rude to any of our friends who look at patents and patent trolls, but it's a long, arduous process, and technology changes very quickly. We in one of our technologies, our group has a patent pending, but there's already been in the last 9 months a number of changes in the ecosystem that we'd have to redo a number of pieces to ensure that can move forward. So I think what we're relying on is when Facebook built themselves, when YouTube built themselves, it wasn't patent, it was speed to market and growth. And I think those are the first things we're going to try and tackle.
Are you planning to use Liquid Avatar somehow with augmented reality? If yes, please elaborate.
We already have a relationship in that space. I think you'll see the fruits of that labor in the next short while. But we think both AR and VR are perfect applications for a Liquid Avatar. And while Liquid Avatar today is a two-dimensional product, I'm a real big fan, and George, as you know, a fairly big nerd. So I think that Ready Player One is a reality that we'll all see, and if people haven't seen the movie or read the book, and AR and VR are going to be especially important as we move forward.
What is the catalyst or catalyst that will change the habits of people, from the current status quo and how they're used to doing things to actually become part of the KABN network? Both people and companies. What do you think of the catalysts?
I think, and I'll let everybody weigh in on this because I think it's unfair for me to hog the answer here. But Liquid Avatar is something that was sitting off to the side, and I had been working on for about 18 months. And I think everything needs a tipping point. We have seen in the last 3 weeks more interest in digital identity, not only because of the macro environment, but because of Liquid Avatar. I think Liquid Avatar provides an easy way for me to share my public and private data accordingly, reduces the need for me to remember anything, gives me access as I would in the real world. Those are all reduction of barriers. The more barriers we can reduce, the faster we'll grow. The fact that I can share something visually with all the information in it and don't have to type or remember anything, I think those become the catalysts. But I'm going to let Ben, Michael, and RJ also comment there.
Yeah, this is Ben. Just I would just echo David's comments. I think that the macro environment is definitely helping put a little bit more of a focus on the digital or the online space. And I think with respect to our Liquid Avatar solution, it is making digital identity tangible. And so I think those 2 points are the ones that I want to leave with.
RJ or Michael?
Yeah, so, for me, I think there's a number of things. One of them is, the typical product type things. Is it easy to use? Is it cool? How's it interpreted? There's the partners and who you partner with. And the other one that I think is that we really need to touch on is all the regulations that are out there. I think that you're seeing the jurisdictions come out with more and more consumer protections that are going to make the cost of compliance start to go up quite a bit. And as a result, they'll be looking for companies like us to help them with it.
Let me see. I'm just going through. There are just a few more questions. I want to make sure I get just in case we're out of time. I want to get the really quality ones in. Let's talk about your biggest challenges. Actually, I think that's a fair question because no matter what, you're in that startup phase, and so KABN isn't IBM, and you're obviously going to have some challenges. Doesn't mean that they're fatal. Doesn't mean that they're bad, but I think everyone would love to know what you guys regard as maybe your 2 or 3 biggest challenges.
Well, it's David again. I think one of them is, people ask you what keeps you up at night, right? And at the end of the day, I think we're solving one of those issues with our current capital program because we've really, for the most part, bootstrapped this to get here, and we see a trajectory that is really large. But recently, both RJ and Rob joining us has really taken a lot of the challenges off our table. RJ with his experience in business development, and Rob Bartlett, who helped me run the demo and running as our head of product, is really changed the landscape. I think we've solved a lot of our challenges, and there will be many more. Please, I don't think that we're being arrogant here, but I think for the moment and where we are today, we've solved a lot of issues and moved very quickly to make sure, based on our experience, because we're all very experienced, that we've diminished as those challenges as much as we can. And Michael, Ben, or RJ, if you've got anything else to add, please do.
Yeah, so for me, I love startups. That's all I've done if you look at my LinkedIn profile. So we have the typical issues that all the other startups have, but I look at the team and the vision. That's for me the core, and that's why I jumped on board as quickly as I could. And now we're bringing the other pieces along. So, obviously, resources, we always want more and more resources, but all the other pieces are there. So it's exciting. Typical startup.
I think this is Ben. I think the only other thing that I would add is that the greatest challenge is also an area, an opportunity to shine, which is, we mentioned a couple of times, David and RJ certainly mentioned the term boil the ocean. We have a tremendous amount of opportunity. We are a startup, and so we have to continue to be laser focused in terms of focusing on the task at hand, accomplishing and reaching certain milestones, and not being distracted in so doing.
Gentlemen, what is your primary growth stream? Because obviously you have multiple streams there. What's your primary one? And specifically, if RJ can expand upon the 3 LOIs that he mentioned to the extent possible.
Yeah.
So go ahead, RJ. It's David, but go ahead.
Go ahead, start, David.
Okay, so I'll start with our primary growth strategy. Unlike commercial operators in our space, we believe that focusing on a partnership program to bring a massive amount of users to Liquid Avatar and effectively creating KABN IDs will give us the opportunity to grow our business. And I think passing the baton over to RJ, he's going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a great question. Unfortunately, I can't share a lot of the details of the LOI, but I can definitely talk to them from a higher level. What's as everyone saw with the Liquid Avatar and all the pieces in the network that we're building, we're getting lots and lots of support and from our customers that want to leverage that network and find other revenue streams for their users. So you saw on my slide, I had a list of the industries that we're targeting because it's ones that the message is really resonating with. And those LOIs are in that business. And once over the next 90 days, we hope to have a lot more details for those accounts. But we're very excited about it. And it's really, really supporting our product roadmap. So more to come for sure.
And thank you, RJ. It's David again. George, I want to add to that. We're seeing reach out to our company very quickly as we promote Liquid Avatar. So we are seeing it, as RJ said, in several sectors, and we're now seeing government involvement, large infrastructure companies, areas in gaming and social media. So we're not only reaching out, but in the last 2 to 3 weeks, there's been a lot of organizations reaching out to us. So we're seeing an acceleration of the opportunity.
I'm going to ask an addendum to that question, maybe back to RJ. RJ, I'd be interested to know as to what the process is like with the LOIs that you've entered into. Specifically, has it been a hard grind to get to the LOI stage, or do you find that there's a lot less friction, and that these are, I know you can't be specific about who they are, but these organizations are really getting it and moving faster than you'd expect?
They are moving. I want to make sure I don't set the expectations too high, especially for David, but they seem to be moving a lot easier and smoother than in my past experiences. A lot of it is because people understand that the regulations that are coming down from the different jurisdictions, that the industry has to go this way. So everybody's trying to kind of get out in front of it, and they want to leverage the ID, online ID, but also be able to monetize it. So they move a little bit quicker than I have experienced in the past. But it's exciting. It's fun.
Thanks, RJ. And from the list of questions I have here, one dovetails nicely into how you ended it. So I'm going to kind of jump the queue a little bit because you talked about regulation. So specifically, how are privacy regulations impacting business development for you guys? How are privacy regulations helping drive the customer to you?
Hi again, it's George. It's David. We've been involved in this opportunity since the outset when GDPR came into existence in May of 2018. So that's the gold standard, and we've really worked against that. So we're focused on making sure that everything we build takes into account the latest and greatest in privacy protection. All our infrastructure is built around that to be able to manage that. And we believe, based on industry information like that of Google, which is discontinuing third-party cookies over the next 2 years, that it will be more important for users or customers or individuals to take control of their digital identity. And it'll be much more seamless. And I think the current macro environment in certain areas like education is showcasing that opportunity.
Thanks, David. Next question is from Mark, who says, first, very impressive business models. Thanks for sharing. 2 questions. What is the plan to gain and scale customer trust? Secondly, how do you plan to be secure against cyber attacks?
Again, great questions. Let me start with the second in terms of security. I think it's really important. We can't talk openly about our security protocols. That's really important to any company. But we're working globally with some of the top groups around the world or top companies around the world to ensure that we have the latest standard in security protocols. We also use biometrics. So using biometrics and some other solutions, it really does reduce the ability to invade the system. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to ensure that our customers are well protected and their data is well protected, and we use the right protocols to ensure that. And George, if you wouldn't mind, can I have the first question again, please?
Let me go back to it here. Just 1 second. The first part of the question was, what is the plan to gain and scale customer trust?
That's a really good question, and I'm going to actually pass it over to both Ben and Michael because I think they'll have excellent answers on that. Ben, would you like to add to that?
Sure. I think that, if you take a look at financial services, obviously, in terms of the onboarding process, inherently in the past, some of the breakdown of trust has been in processes of providing your sensitive data, like your government ID and your utility bill, bank statements, to sort of, sending it in or sending a photocopy, things that don't really instill a good sense of trust. I think because of our process, we are instilling that trust at the starting point. And I think the fact that we have a reusable ID and you don't have to go through that process time and time again, just by the very fact of not feeling like you have to share or compromise any of your data time and time again, and instills more trust in the process. I think that there are a lot of headaches and concerns, as I've mentioned before, in my part regarding legacy systems. Our entire process is more efficient, and I think because of that, it instills the trust in the system. Michael, I don't know if you want to add specific to the loyalty piece.
Trust is a really interesting concept when you think about loyalty, and it's trust is something that not only do you have to get quickly, you have to keep, and loyalty is all about creating a long-term conversation, and it's based on good communication, listening and informing, and living up to promise. So we'll acquire the trust and maintain the trust by delivering what we promise to deliver, by keeping the environment secure and keeping it relevant, And like any long-term relationship, as long as we keep open lines of communication, as long as we're willing to listen to issues and answer the issues truthfully, we'll be able to maintain trust.
Thanks, guys. We're gonna have just 2 or 3 more questions because it's getting up on 1 o'clock. We ran a little longer in the presentation, but there are 2 or 3 more important questions to ask, and I'm grouping them because there are a few questions around it. So the first one is around, let's call it a competitive landscape. Obviously, not obviously, but KABN may not be the only player pursuing these markets. What does the competitive landscape look like?
Thanks, George. David, we talked about that a bit earlier, that we believe there's about 60 competitors in the market space today that are involved actively in the digital identity space. The vast majority of those are single or transactional parties. They create a profile for a customer, and if the customer moves to another location and needs a profile again, they'll enable that for another third party to do so. Our key rings on Liquid Avatar allow us to store multiple digital identities, because again, in the real world, you might have a driver's license, and that might be an EID in Ontario. You might have a bank account that has a digital identity. Royal Banks just offered their own. And so we want to be able to store multiple digital identities, not making us so much a competitor, but a complementer. And that strategy, we believe, will embrace the entire industry and allow third parties to use Liquid Avatar to enhance the value to their consumers.
And a bit of a follow-on question that I got by email is there a risk that you have either senior bank execs or senior IT people and compliance people who simply, no matter what KABN has to offer, wouldn't take a chance on a startup handling their data privacy? That's the old, you don't get fired for hiring IBM or buying IBM at the end of the day. Is that a factor that you guys have to deal with?
Well, again, it depends who owns the identity. If the user owns the identity or the bank owns the identity. And there's 2 different philosophies, and we've talked about this. There is direct authentication and indirect authentication. And direct authentication is when we would have information directly on a keyring, and there might be indirect authentication. So we're working around a process that will allow for both. We do understand that it will take some time for certain organizations to want to partner with us, and we're aware that there will be potentially some hesitation, but we want to ensure that we're doing things right and giving the consumer that power, because your question alone really puts the power back into the hands of corporations, where the user should have control over their identity.
Yeah, hey, this is Ben. I just want to add, George, if you don't mind, that it is a great question. But if you think about even some of the examples that David mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, a couple of years ago, you wouldn't have seen banks partnering with fintechs, let alone a large card network like Visa acquiring a fintech called Plaid. You just wouldn't see that. And you wouldn't have networks and FIs be willing to partner or acquire fintechs that are touching a lot of consumer data. But I think, to David's point, we start building the case, starting to build out our ecosystem and build out our network. And I think that's when it starts to happen in terms of those discussions with more established financial institutions.
There are naturally a couple of questions surrounding the fact that you're potentially going to be a public company. So I know you can't be overly specific, but a question that came in, and there have been a couple of other ones earlier. So basically, in terms of investing in the company, any plans to go to market soon, and any private placement coming soon? So you don't have to answer that specifically. Maybe you can tell everyone what you're able to tell them with respect to your proposed RTO, where it's at, and maybe how people can participate.
So thank you, George. As you mentioned at the beginning, 2 things. One is that KABN North America is actively involved in a proposed RTO or reverse takeover with Torino Power Solutions, which is CSE TPS. And both companies' shareholders have approved the business combination. We're awaiting approval from the regulators. We are conducting an RTO financing, and as you mentioned, if anyone is interested, we're happy to talk to them directly, or they should contact their financial advisor, and we'd be happy to speak with them as well.
All right, thank you. Couple more questions. This one comes from Amar, who's got two parts to it. Has your security model been audited by an independent third party? And how, and if so, were they published? And the other question is, how are customers given access, visibility / control over the profiles you collect for them?
So let's talk first about the security audit. We went through a GDPR audit, which involved some levels of security, and that was by an independent third party. And one of our advisors is a leading cybersecurity expert, and we're following a lot of the protocols that have been set for us. We also use third-party leading software. So we have not done a full third-party security audit yet, but it is within the purview of what we're planning to do prior to the launch of Liquid Avatar. So that's very clear to us. The second part, in terms of what we collect in terms of profile, the user always has control over the data. So what we're collecting both privately is never for use. We never rent, we never sell data, we never share data. We would bring offers to the user, as Michael said, and if they choose to engage with a third party, they create that relationship. But all the data will be available as under the guidelines of GDPR, the Canadian privacy rules, and CCPA. All data is available to the user upon request.
And how, maybe, I'm not sure if this is what they're getting at, but just to revisit the question, how are they given access? Is that through the app that you demonstrated earlier? I guess that's maybe where they're going. How are the customers given access and visibility to their profiles?
Well, they will have visibility to their profiles because all their key rings will manage their data. But they also can, under the law, provide a written request for all data that we have on them. That's part of the mandate of privacy.
Okay, and I think that kind of sums up the questions. There are some more, but we're running over time. So David, maybe what I'd like to do is hand it over to you for a 2-minute summary. Or you've maybe already done the key takeaways with your slide over the 3 things to remember. But I'll hand it over to you to end it off.
Well, thank you, George. On behalf of the team, we'd really like to thank you for your attendance. You've got the contact information below. Again, it's our reach, our unique business approach, and our team that we believe makes KABN unique, and the opportunity to focus in this sector, in the digital identity sector, on verification, management, and monetization of online ID, and very much focused on putting the value of that identity back into the hands of our customers. So again, we'd like to thank you. And if you need more information, or you'd like to ask us a question or request a call or business development opportunity, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks, gentlemen. And for everyone watching and or listening through Zoom here, thank you again very much for taking the time to participate. We don't take your time for granted. And we hope and trust that, in fact, it's been a great use of your time, and looking forward to hearing more from you. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.